You're listening to the CyberWire Network, powered by N2K.
Hey everybody, Rick Howard here. This is exciting. Check out our new special edition episode where Brandon Karpf, our executive director of new markets, interviews a very special guest, ChatGPT, the AI chatbot launched by OpenAI that a lot of us have been playing with here at the CyberWire. Tune in to hear us try to turn ChatGPT into a security pundit, or at least a SOC analyst. Brandon asks the language construct questions, and then he and I analyze the answer. I'll give you a hint. It's pretty good. Come join us and see what you think.
And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action to prevent ransomware, account takeover, and online fraud. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices. With knowledge of the specific data criminals have in hand from InfoStealer malware on managed and unmanaged devices, security teams can respond with a more efficient and effective process called post-infection remediation. Get SpyCloud's post-infection remediation guide outlining the 7 steps for preventing a malware infection from becoming a full-blown ransomware incident. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show. Gootloader's evolution. Yandex source code has been leaked, and Yandex blames a rogue insider. New GRU wiper malware is active against Ukraine. Latvia reports cyberattacks by Gamaredon. Russia and the U.S. trade accusations of malign cyber activity. A hacktivist auxiliary's social support system. Deepen Desai from Zscaler describes the Lilithbot malware. Rick Howard looks at chaotic simians. And wannabes can be a nuisance too. LockBit impersonators are seen operating in Northern Europe. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Monday, January 30th, 2023. Mandiant has published a report outlining notable changes to the Gootloader malware over the course of 2022. The researchers say these changes include the use of multiple variations of the phone launcher, the distribution of new follow-on payloads, and changes to the Gootloader downloader and infection chain, including the introduction of Gootloader.PowerShell. The malware is also using new techniques for obfuscation. Gootloader is distributed via malicious business-related documents hosted on compromised websites, and defenders should be on the lookout for fresh campaigns. Source code belonging to Yandex, the Russian search engine giant, was leaked online. The leak doesn't appear to contain any customer data, BleepingComputer writes, and Yandex says the incident was an insider breach, not the result of an external attack. The files were stolen last July, and a former Yandex executive speculates that the motivation for the leak was political. In any case, the hackers responsible don't appear to have tried to sell the code. Security firm ESET says a new strain of wiper malware they're calling SwiftSlicer has been deployed against Ukrainian networks. ESET Research tweeted, on January 25th, ESET Research discovered a new cyber attack in Ukraine. Attackers deployed a new wiper we named SwiftSlicer using Active Directory group policy. The SwiftSlicer wiper is written in Go programming language. We attribute this attack to Sandworm. The Sandworm group is operated by Russia's GRU, and SwiftSlicer represents a successor to Hermetic Wiper and Caddy Wiper, both of which the Russian service had deployed against Ukraine in the early phases of the invasion. Hermetic Wiper was identified in February 2022 during the opening days of the invasion. Caddy Wiper was observed the following month. ESET has not identified the organization or organizations affected by SwiftSlicer. The Ukrainian Computer Emergency Response Team, CERT-UA, on Friday reported identifying 5 distinct strains of wiper malware in the networks of the Ukrinform news outlet. The strains and the systems affected were Caddy Wiper, Zero Wipe, and S-Delete, all affecting Windows, Awful Shred, which is effective against Linux systems, and BidSwipe, which is used against FreeBSD. The Russian hacktivist group Cyber Army of Russia Reborn claimed credit in its Telegram channel for the infestations. BleepingComputer says that 2 of the strains, Zero Wipe and BidSwipe, represent either novel malware or, if they're existing, known strains. They're being tracked under unfamiliar names by CERT-UA. The Gamaredon APT seems to have tried a phishing attack against Latvia's Ministry of Defense last week. The record reports that Latvian officials said the attempts were unsuccessful. The apparent motive is said to have been counter-espionage. The group is also known as Primitive Bear and widely believed to be operated out of occupied Sevastopol by Russia's FSB. TASS quotes Russia's deputy foreign minister as saying that the U.S. has been responsible for recruiting and training members of Ukraine's auxiliary IT army, a hacktivist group active against Russian targets. On Friday, Roskomnadzor, Russia's internet agency, blocked Russia's access to the U.S. FBI and CIA sites, Interfax reports. They're run, Roskomnadzor says, by a hostile country, and they aim at destabilizing the social and political situation in the Russian Federation. Blocked, along with the FBI and CIA, is the U.S. State Department's Rewards for Justice site, which offers a bounty for information on 4 categories of malign activity: terrorism, foreign election interference, malicious cyber activity, and finally, and simply, North Korea. Thursday, shortly after the U.S. Justice Department announced the international operation that disrupted the Hive ransomware gang, Rewards for Justice tweeted the following offer: if you have information that links Hive or any other malicious cyber actors targeting U.S. critical infrastructure to a foreign government, send us your tip via our Tor tip line. You could be eligible for a reward. That is, to gloss the offer, we're looking at you, Russia. Hive is a Russian criminal ransomware operation, and like most Russian gangs, it has connections with Russia's security and intelligence organs. Information tying Hive to the Russian government could qualify for an award of up to a cool $10 million. A comrade could retire on that, couldn't they? Military auxiliaries exist within a social context that provides both moral and sometimes even financial support. Consider benign examples that will be familiar to readers in the U.S., like the Civil Air Patrol and the Coast Guard Auxiliary. They function as civic organizations in a civil society, at least as much as they operate as auxiliaries of the Air Force and the Coast Guard. The same seems to be true to a limited extent with hacktivist organizations serving as security and intelligence service auxiliaries. Radware describes the support system that's grown up around Russia's Killnet group, stating, "It's not common for analysts to have the opportunity to study the social circles of criminal organizations, but occasionally a group emerges that is more transparent than others. Examining a criminal organization's social presence can give analysts valuable insights into the structure and operations of the organization, as well as the relationships and connections between its members and the community around them. Killnet is the sort of group that lends itself to such analysis, and Radware describes 3 organizations that have been prominent in their support of the hacktivist mission. First, Infinity Music, a music label whose star rapper, Kaze Oboima, has published a song called Killnet Flow, Anonymous Diss. This isn't financial support, rather it's support in the form of bad boy street cred, because if you know Kaze Oboima, you know he's always been official. Second, Hooligan Z Jewelry, a Moscow-based designer of street-inspired jewelry, is selling Killnet-branded drip, and it's worth noting in passing how much both Infinity Music and Hooligan Z Jewelry owe to American pop culture. Their street cred is derivative, and that's something the Kremlin can't be entirely comfortable with. Third, Solaris Marketplace, and here we're on more familiar ground. Solaris is a darknet criminal marketplace, and it's made financial contributions to Killnet. Radware concludes, from financial contributions to active participation in illegal activities to passive support through art and entertainment, the social circles of Killnet demonstrate the complexity of criminal organizations' relationships, connections, and structure. And, we might add, the seductive power of American popular culture. Not that that's a good thing or a bad thing, it's just a thing. And finally, Security Affairs reported Saturday that the LockBit locker malware has been seen in use targeting small and mid-sized businesses in Northern Europe. Though this malware is primarily operated by a group bearing the same name, these attacks don't appear to originate from the gang. Rather, they seem to be the work of copycat actors who procured a leaked version of the gang's malware. One instance targeting a Belgian company was observed in which a swath of internal files was encrypted by the faux LockBit offenders. Fortunately, the company was able to resume normal operations after restoring their network from a backup, though the damage that can be wrought, even by unseasoned, unaffiliated wannabes, as Security Affairs affectionately calls the operators, remains considerable. Coming up after the break, Deepen Desai from Zscaler describes the Lilithbot malware, and Rick Howard looks at chaotic simians. Stick around. And now, a word from our sponsor, KnowBe4. Where would InfoSec professionals be without users making security mistakes? Working less than 60 hours per week, maybe. Actually having a weekend every so often. While user behavior can be a challenge, they can also be an InfoSec professional's greatest asset, once properly equipped. Users want to do the right thing, but often lack the knowledge to do so. That's one of the reasons KnowBe4 developed Security Coach, a real-time security coaching tool that takes alerts from your existing security stack and sends immediate coaching to users who've taken risky actions. Existing security tools will likely block a user from visiting a high-risk website, for example, but the user might not understand why. Security Coach analyzes these alerts and provides users with relevant security tips via email or Slack, coaching them on why the action they just took was risky. Help users learn from their mistakes and strengthen your organization's security culture with Security Coach. Learn more at knowbe4.com/securitycoach. That's knowbe4.com/securitycoach. And we thank KnowBe4 for sponsoring our show. Are you laser-focused on protecting the data inside your company's network? What about the executive and employee data outside your network? Like exposed personal information that's just out there on the surface web, waiting for a bad actor to use it to launch a highly personalized phishing scheme that brings down your network. Specifically designed for the enterprise, Delete Me for Business makes it simple to implement and scale a proactive privacy protection program at your company. Delete Me continuously finds and removes personal data from online sources. Why risk your employees' personal data being used against your company? Delete it today with Delete Me. Visit joindeleteme.com/cyberwire to learn more. That's Join deleteme.com/cyberwire. And joining me once again is Rick Howard. He is the CyberWire's chief analyst and also our chief security officer. Rick, it is always my pleasure to welcome you back.
Hey, Dave.
So over on our CyberWire Slack channels this week, you have been talking about this thing called chaos engineering. I'm slightly familiar with that term, but I'll admit I don't know a whole lot about it. What are we talking about here, Rick?
So it's a phrase that describes a disruptive and some would say radical idea in the area of cybersecurity resilience.
Well, if I'm remembering correctly, resilience is one of your key first principle strategies, right?
Yeah, that's right. And while we've been watching that lane of research for the past couple of years, we noticed that a handful of Silicon Valley tech giants have been using this technique since the late 2000s to ensure that their worldwide system of systems never goes down.
So what makes chaos engineering so radical?
Well, these chaos engineers run experiments on their production systems, and that's the key phrase, their production systems, right? They're designed to discover systemic weaknesses in their system design, and that's a really fancy way to say that they intentionally destroy, I guess they would say they seriously degrade it, but pieces of their production network to observe if their deployed resilient systems handle the situation the way they designed it to.
My recollection of this is that it was kind of made famous by the folks over at Netflix a couple of years ago. Didn't they have, there was a software module they called Chaos Monkey?
Yeah, I love that name, all right? So in these days, Netflix has deployed an entire suite of these chaos engineering resilience tools, something they call the simian army. How cool is that, all right? And they have really cool names like Latency Monkey and Conformity Monkey and Doctor Monkey, just to name three.
King Kong.
I know. That's what comes to mind when I thought about it, too.
Yeah.
So in this week's CSO Perspective podcast over on the CyberWire Pro side, we talk about the history of chaos engineering and how this is an advanced technique that maybe not everybody should use. But if you're a large Fortune 500 company or maybe even a gigantic government institution that absolutely has to keep your systems running 24/7, then this is probably a technique you should consider.
All right, well, that is over on the pro side. So what do you have for us over on the public side?
For the public side, we unvault those old episodes from the CSO Perspective archive. And this week's show is a Rick the Toolman episode from May of 2022 about how single sign-on works.
Now, if I remember correctly, single sign-on is a key component to identity and authorization management, right?
Yeah, that's right. And which makes it a key tactic to consider for implementing your zero trust first principle strategy. So in this show, we explain how single sign-on standards like OAuth, and that stands for Open Authentication, and SAML for Security Assertion Markup Language, how they all work together and how you might use them to the benefit of your own enterprise.
Well, before I let you go, what is the phrase this week for your Word Notes podcast?
This week's word is NIST for the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology. And did you know, Dave, here's the trivia question for you, that the authority to create the NIST back in 1901, when it was called the National Standards Bureau, was taken from Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution.
Wow. All right. Well, there's some schoolhouse rock I can get behind.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Rick Howard is the CyberWire's chief security officer and also our chief analyst. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Dave.
And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Deepen Desai. He is Global CISO and Head of Security Research and Operations at Zscaler. Deepen, it's always a pleasure to welcome you back to the show. I want to talk to you today about the Lilithbot malware, which I know is something you and your colleagues have had an eye on lately. What can you share with us today?
Hey, thank you, Dave. So Lilithbot is a multifunction malware family that the team discovered through our cloud security platform. And this is something that we flagged in our sandbox environment. And once we saw the payload, we started analyzing it, and the team was quickly able to associate this with a Russian gesture group. It's also known as Eternity Group, which runs by the project Eternity Project. And it has been active since January 2022, so fairly new. But one of the key highlights over here is this group has been known to use as a service subscription model to distribute several types of payload. Lilithbot is just one of them, right, on the underground forums.
Can you run us through the things that they're offering?
Yeah, they offer a wide variety of malware, right? Starting with info stealers, which is what we're talking about right now. It may have additional functionalities like coin mining, full-blown bot CNC modules, ransomware, worm droppers, right? So something that allows the threat actor to propagate within the environment as well. And then it also goes on the destructive side of the house where they're able to support and distribute DDoS bots.
So it's really kind of one-stop shopping for folks who are out looking for this sort of stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What are we talking about here in terms of cost? Is this an expensive provider, or are these things comparatively affordable?
Yeah, so they basically have a subscription model, right? It's basically a malware as a service membership fee is what the threat actors will be paying here, and what you're paying for is these type of groups that run the malware as a service model has already incorporated all kinds of advanced checks like anti-debugging, anti-VM. They will already have figured out how to securely perform CNC communication, how to offer, buying purchase platforms and things like that. So if you're someone new on the horizon, you could basically pick one of these payloads up, and honestly, it raises your malware's ability to evade detection significantly because you're already relying on someone that has done all the work for you.
Well, let's talk about the detection side then. I mean, how easy are these tools to detect, and what are your recommendations for people to do so?
Yeah, so these type of tools, so Lilithbot in particular, what we saw was it was, using various types of fields like license key, encoding key, Goot, global UID, right, which is encrypted via AES, and it decrypts itself at runtime. It steals information, it uploads itself as a zip file. So all the stolen information from the system gets zipped up, and then it's sent to the remote command and control server. So when you think about detection, I mean, you the very first component that plays a very important role in flagging these type of evolving, continuously changing payloads is your cloud sandboxing solution, right? Having the ability to detonate the payload and observe the behavior and use that to flag the file as malicious plays a very important role over here. If you rely just on static signature-based approach, the part that I mentioned earlier, malware as a service, they have some of these things already automated. So they're able to get around those static detections. So sandbox, very, very important to flag and block that initial payload from entering your environment. The second aspect that you should always prepare for, what if my endpoint were to get compromised by this for whatever reason, right? And that's where the CNC communication and the data exfil comes into play. So over there, you need to have ability to inspect TLS encrypted traffic, perform DLP inspection, and then apply your CNC detection as well, where the goal is to block the communication from happening between the compromised endpoint and the attacker-controlled infrastructure.
All right. Well, good guidance as always. Deepen Desai, thanks for joining us. This episode of the CyberWire is made possible in part by Strider Technologies. Strider is the first strategic intelligence tool built to help companies, government agencies, and research institutions protect their innovation and compete in a new era of global strategic competition. With trillions of open-source data points, Strider's technology and intelligence solutions enable you to proactively identify, manage, and respond to state-sponsored intellectual property theft and supply chain risks. Learn how to secure your technology talent and supply chains at striderintel.com. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. The CyberWire podcast is a production of N2K Networks, proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of DataTribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. This episode was produced by Liz Urban and senior producer Jennifer Iben. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. The show was written by John Petrick. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Hey everybody, Rick here. If you're anything like me, you hate commercials. So subscribe to CyberWire Pro and get all of our public podcasts ad-free, as well as our exclusive CyberWire Pro podcasts, briefings, articles, events, and bonus content. Designed for the busy professional, CyberWire Pro cuts through the noise and disinformation, giving you access to actionable reporting, trends, analysis, and insight on global events occurring in the industry, all at your fingertips. Subscribe to CyberWire Pro today for only $9.99 a month, or save with an annual subscription for only $99. That is well worth it to get rid of all of those commercials. Visit thecyberwire.com/pro to subscribe today.